And with that note, or not a note even, we're back. It's Cosmotronic. It's episode 5. It's Friday. And it's been Friday all day. How are we doing, everyone? It's time to be here to discuss all things WildStar. And of course, this week has been the subject of the sneak attack, or words to that effect. I'm not quite sure why that hand gesture was required. Maybe Stalkers do that. We'll try and discover as the show goes on. But I'm not by myself. You've been saved from the endless monologue of doom. For we have a Gaizmoff with us. Say hello,
Yes.
Gaizmoff.
Hello. Hello and good evening.
Now, we'll see what we can do with our... might be a bit of a double act, we'll see. We usually start with the updates. So, Gaizmoff, perhaps you would like to elucidate, enlighten, and enrapture us with the things that have enamoured you this week.
Okay, so in terms of what's been happening in the past 7 days, we've had really a compressed schedule. So we've had the Spellslinger, a deep dive. We've seen their DevSpeak video. We've had a Reddit AMA, and we've had a live stream as well, where they took us through not just showing off Spellslinger abilities, mainly focusing on the DPS side, though, to be honest with you, but also by taking us through the dungeon Storm Talon's lair as well. They took us through that from the first boss to the second boss, showed us some of the optional quests and some of the optional side bits and pieces that we can do as well. That's a level 20 dungeon, so it doesn't have the kind of full fat optional bits and pieces that you'll see that they've said will take place in some of the later dungeons. They said some of the earlier stuff, and this was from your Dungeons and Raids interviewers, but what was his name again? Who was the guy that you spoke to?
That would be Brett.
Brett, yes. Brett Schneider?
Yes.
So when you spoke to Brett Schneider, he was basically describing that the earlier stuff is going to be reasonably linear, but not too linear. You will still have some optional stuff, but it's the later stuff that'll be completely all over the place.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting. They also did quite a heavy comparison between the Esper and the Spellslinger, because a lot of us were saying, well, they're both in light armor, they both do DPS and healing, what's the difference? And they showed that in a couple of ways. They had two really useful infographics that showed a comparison of the two telegraphs, and if you haven't seen them, then they are well worth digging out, because it shows that the Esper has a narrower range but more coverage in terms of area effects. They have more of an arc to that their spells will affect in front of them, but they can't hit as far, whereas a Spellslinger has a much tighter arc of focus but can hit that much further. I think it's 40 yards some of their spells can hit, which is quite impressive. Apart from that, we also got a taste of the Stalker. Now, normally we wouldn't get anything on the Stalker until, say, Wednesday at least, and then they'd reveal the rest on Thursday and then Saturday. But because of this strange American tradition called Thanksgiving, and the even stranger American tradition of Black Friday, they've decided to take everything that would happen in the second half of the week and move it to the front half of the week. So we've had the Stalker deep dive DevSpeak happening on Tuesday, and then we had the AMA following shortly afterwards on the same day, which quite rapidly got flooded up. We won't have, from the looks of things, a Stalker live stream, which is a bit like, oh, because that would have been quite nice.
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, clearly they're not going to put out. I don't believe they're not going to put out the live stream during Thanksgiving. It's too big of an event in the US for anyone to want to be away from family, friends, and turkey, with or without gravy, depending on your preference. But Carbine are a sneaky lot, and the Stalker is a sneaky class. So I am half expecting a sneak attack random live stream at some point next week. Just a thought, enough. But it just seems to fit their tone and their humour and everything else.
I think that it's going to be an interesting one because they're rumoured to be starting the Well, it's following on from what we've had last week. We're going to be moving into unknown territory next week, I would have thought, which is going to be even more interesting. So,
and I'll be intrigued
whether we'll get a kind of...
Sorry, I'll be intrigued to see what that does to the stream numbers, because they've been pretty darn popular and pretty entertaining so far. And this is with an audience that goes, yeah, we've seen these classes, okay, it's new stuff, it's great, we can dive in. But what's going to happen when it is the totally new and shiny stuff? So, yeah, I hope they're ready for it, but I forecast an increase in viewers.
Yes, but they've already been putting in, 10,000 a stream? So that's not bad.
It's not bad at all. In fact, you could say it's rather good.
Yeah, I would say that. But you know what? I'm British, eh? Come on.
Oh, I say, it's totally spiffing. Anyway, that's enough of spiffing. You don't want to... It could be worse. I could be spiffing in your pudding. Anyhow, what are our takeaways? Do we have anything else we need to throw out, Gaizmoff, or shall we dive into the AMA?
So the other big point of note is winter beta and winter beta survey. If you want to get into the winter beta, an easy way to increase your chances is to complete the survey. Now there is a survey. Go on. I was going to say that there is we will be providing a link to the survey in the notes.
Fabulous. It's a minor interjection. Before we see the posts on the forums, before we hear the complaints, let me just reiterate. Filling in the survey increases your chances.
Yes.
Now, there is a difference between increases and guarantees. Exactly. I just want to get that out there now, before someone pops up and says, but you said if we filled in the survey. Sorry guys, no guarantees in life, and girls of course, but you know, they need to collect data, they need to understand their demographics, they need to do a ton of stuff. So they're really saying, well, help us do what we want to do, and we'll bring you to the top of that list. So it would be very foolish not to fill it in my personal opinion. But anyway, Gaizmoff, sorry, back to you.
No, that's fine. And I was going to say exactly the same thing, so no. Anyway, so that's pretty much the kind of headline topics, if you like, for the week. But do you want to get deeper into the kind of the Spellslinger to start off with, and then more into the Stalker, or how do you want to play this?
Let's start with the Stalker and see how time runs. Because I think that's really the focus of tonight, but we can happily dive back into the Slinger. I was actually really intrigued by... I actually felt reading the AMA, they've almost put more information in the AMA this time round than some of the other times. Now, I don't know if this is deliberate, because we know that we don't have the stream to follow up on immediately. I don't know if it's the nature of the individuals who are there, because the names changed a touch. Let me look at my my magical page of notes. Who did we have? We had Mark and Jade, so known as CRB Azrael, CRB Merkel, and CRB Atreide. Is it Atreide or Atreide?
Atreide, I think.
Atreide.
It's French.
It is Atreide.
It's like...
It is indeed. So we have the global community manager in Loik, we have Merkel, the warrior class designer, and of course Azrael, the stalker and Esper class designer. So just the right people to start getting some answers. And let me look at some of the things that I pulled out straight away. I'm going to start with something really core. So the stalker is, for want of a better term, the rogue archetype. Now, it depends how you define rogues, I guess, a little bit. To many people, they'll turn around and talk about the WoW rogue. It's a good reference point. Now, you can go back to Pathfinder rogues and swashbucklers and all these other things that maybe aren't quite that same mix. So we have got our melee-focused, stealthing individual. And the first question that people want to know all the time, of course, is, when can I be in stealth? when am I not in stealth, and how does stealth work anyway for this particular character? Because people that like to play rogues are sneaky. They like to run around behind people, stab them in the back, or in the olden days, stun lock them and go no, 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 till you were dead.
Mm-hmm.
I know all
Indeed.
about that. I used to play a hunter. I used to not like rogues very much. However, they've given us a clear indication that we will be able to stealth in combat on a cooldown. But really interestingly, the cooldown, the timer to re-trigger stealth resets every time you come out of combat. So straight away they've taken this idea of, well, my class needs this stealth mechanic to, I've pushed my button, I'm going to sit here and twiddle my fingers for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to go fight another mob because I want to start with a double backflip, backstab, or whatever it might be. But they found a way around that, and that's such a simple idea, but I don't think I've seen that one. Correct me if you've seen it anywhere, Gaizmoff?
I haven't seen that myself. I think that there's so many things that are interesting about the Stalker stealth mechanic. There's the way that it's you can go into stealth, but it's not, you're not invisible. If you get closer than 15 meters, NPCs and other players will have a chance of noticing you. Other players might start to see the nanite invisibility that you're wearing start to shimmer. They might see the grass move around your feet, stuff like that. It all depends on things like level difference and stuff like that. But it's a nice touch, and they're keeping that kind of sci-fi feel.
Yeah.
I also think that the way they've set it up so that you can actually stealth as your innate ability and enable it in combat if you need to try and get a little bit of an advantage while you're in combat, particularly if you've got abilities that give a bonus while stealthed. I think that's a nice touch as well. But you can't be permanently invisible. They've set it up so that you won't be able to be permanently stealthed, even if you spend all of your amp points in sneaking around.
And I think that is, as someone that won't be playing a Stalker, I'm really pleased about that. I also love this idea of you can see the grass moving. So I've got this idea of sort of you're in a PvP environment. You know there was something around here somewhere. You're on high alert and you're scanning all around, and all of a sudden the really observant player will go, "That blade of grass just moved. I now know where you are." And to me, again, it introduces the idea of having a higher skill cap on players in terms of awareness. It's not a giveaway. Yeah. It's not a, hey, there's a red circle moving along the ground, we know where that is. It's not a, I'll spin in a circle and hit flare as many times as I possibly can. But it's a really cool idea and a great mechanic.
Yes,
so,
although it does mean that you kind of want to have battlegrounds and arenas that take advantage of it. So you may end up with something like if you've got a metal corridor arena, for example, or the inside of a spaceship as another example, where you've got a metal hull with maybe a couple of obstacles and that's about it. That's not going to make it easy for you to try and detect if someone's sneaking around. But if you've got something like a cornfield, conversely, that's going to make it life an awful lot easier to try and spot the Stalker. So.
And it lends an element of yikes. It's, I don't know, I'm in a battleground and it's one-on-one, and quick, go and stand on the cornfield, or whatever you might need to do. And it actually brings the environment into play much more, which I find really quite interesting, quite fascinating. Another thing they mentioned about the stealth and the mechanics of the interrelationship with it and everything else. So, if I understand things correctly, if you are now stealthed, certain abilities that you could choose to put into your las will gain benefits.
That's exactly it.
But those abilities, of course, are still available to you when you're not stealthed. So this isn't like you must be in stealth and behind the character to push this button. This is a...
And that
do thing A, do thing B, make a choice.
Yeah, and I think that's a very, very sensible move, because you've got the limited action set. You don't want to have a situation where you can only press a button in that set every 2 minutes, every minute. We like to push buttons. As gamers, we want to push buttons all the time. And so having a button that you can only push once in a blue moon, but it's really useful to have it on your loadout, feels a bit crap. And I think when Hugh Shelton described that, which was in one of the earlier class reveals, I think it was the Esper one, it makes a whole lot of sense. He was talking about buffs and debuffs and why they've tied them to combat abilities rather than having separate buffs and debuffs, which you'd only cast once every 30 minutes. And it makes a whole lot of sense. We want to be able to push buttons. We don't want to have it there when we need it. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic move. I think that it will mean as well that you will have some people who play much more of a stealth-heavy Stalker, and you'll get some who go much more for an upfront assault, kind of dodging, diving, moving, ducking and weaving kind of thing. So kind of like bantamweight boxer kind of thing, if that makes sense.
It does, and
I'm
let's
hoping the limited action set. There you go.
Allows. Apologies, I think I'm getting a little touch of lag here. I don't know if that's coming through or not elsewhere. But one thing we haven't mentioned, and not to forget when you're talking about different builds, is of course we know of effectively 3 different stances. So we have the avoidance stance. We have the extra damage. I think that one's called lethality. And we have the middle one, which is basically, I think, was described as the jack of all trades stance. And 2 points here. Firstly, I found the idea of the jack of all trades stance interesting, because I couldn't immediately see where it would actually be a preferable thing to have. I'm either going to be saying, I'm doing DPS, I want to do maximum DPS, that's where I want to be. Or to be saying, well, actually, let's not forget, Stalker is a dual role. It isn't all we've talked about so far, really, are the DPS elements and how it might work. But of course, it is also a litank, or a tank, if said normally. And it seems to be setting up to be the avoidance tank, so the rogue tanking dream might now come true. Not just the odd, quick, it's all gone wrong, tank this for 15 seconds evasion button that we all used to know and love. Hello, Anixia. So there's a whole playstyle opening up there, and of course there's a stance for it, and you'll hopefully have to build your las for it, and hopefully it will have a different feel and flavour, say, to warrior tanking, perhaps a touch more reactionary. And hopefully there'll be encounters that are designed for it where really it becomes an optimal thing to do and to be. But then we've got this jack of all trades stance, so where are we going to use this?
Many whelps handle it is the first thing that comes to mind.
I'd be going evasion there if I was in many whelps handle it mode.
If you have a limited action set bar which is dedicated to single target DPS during a raid, and suddenly all hell breaks loose and you need to start picking up some ads, many ads, lots of ads, a whole screen full of ads, having someone that can flip into jack of all trades is probably going to be more advantageous, for them at least, than having to go, well, I can go into tank stance and then I can stand there like a donut. So I think that's the idea. It's a kind of like an oh crap, and the Stalker can then go, don't worry, I'll save you.
But of course then comes the question, when is the, well, I'll become a tank and just, grab all the whelps, versus the, well, actually there's only one other person alive, so I still need to do some DPS here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to lead to some interesting gameplay choices. So let me throw another random curveball at you. Or in this instance, actually not a curveball that I'm going to throw at you, but a nanodart. So one thing that I thought was interesting is someone asked an excellent question that was well replied to, and I can't remember the name, Zune, someone that began with an X, I think, and it was the first question in the AMA that got answered. It's at the top of the thread at the moment. And they talked about the balancing act that often needed to be played about doing damage up close and then needing to get out of there because the floor's exploding, there's a fridge falling on your head, there's a herd of rampant black cats running around, whatever it might be. So melee often needs to go, oh yikes, and get out of there. And rangers going, yep, we're fine, bang, bang. We're not standing where the danger is, we're carrying on shooting. And in many fights that was advantageous. So the Stalker has to get out of there, but it now has Nanodart. So this isn't just an occasional fan of knives, this is actually an ability you can use to provide a level of range DPS, or so it seems from the answer. I don't know how much, I don't know how consistent, I don't know whether it's lower down the damage scale, etc, etc. It intrigues me, because if the rogue archetype, as in the Stalker, has got this ability to do decent damage at range, doesn't that cause the problem of balancing damage in the other direction for a class that usually does good burst damage, does great damage up close, but occasionally has to get out of there? But, you know, on balance, it ends up even in most games, depending on the state of the game or the fight.
Yeah.
Is there not a danger that nano darts become a bit tricky?
I think it depends entirely on the fight. If you're doing nano darts, you might find that it's optimal for certain fights, but it's a case of having a look at, okay, I can DPS these things all around me versus I can DPS this one thing. And if you spread the damage wider, it generally becomes a lower damage per target. So if you've only got one schmuck in your way, then it becomes less effective. That's why I think that the Stalker, particularly if you're doing things like boss fights or single mob farming, where you're going from mob to mob to mob to mob, stuff like that, I think it's still going to be kind of like, it's not going to be as effective. It's only going to be really useful when you've got a screen full of things and someone's just Leroy Jenkins to load of stuff. So I'm coming up with all the whelp references.
All the whelps. I now, of course, have the monologue from our many whelps handle it friend in my head, 99% of which is not repeatable for this show. For the 20% of players out there that know it, that are currently laughing, great. For the rest who are wondering what on earth we're talking about, I am probably going to have to link the animation in the show notes somewhere. Yes, 50 DKP minus to anyone that doesn't get the reference. Yes. It throws up a PvP conundrum as well, though, because let's take another idea. So we've seen the Spellslinger, and if I'm a Spellslinger, I don't want you anywhere near me, Mr. Stalker. I'm going to run around you. I'm not going to let you hit me. I'm going to attempt to kite you. I'm going to do everything I can to whittle away your health without you laying one of your spiny metal protuberances on my good person. But you can now just shoot me. So, again, it's going to be a little interesting, because this whole open a gap, close the gap game that goes on between melee and ranged, I don't know, it just intrigues me that they're making such a big point about, yep, it's got this ranged ability.
And I think it's going to be one of those things where it will come out in playtesting. But look at it the other way around. If you're a Stalker and someone goes, we're going to root you,
but I'm not.
Well, if someone is playing a Stalker and someone else is playing an Esper, and you want to basically eliminate the Stalker's effectiveness, all you do is just continually root it. The Stalker can't close into range in that case, and you're laughing because they can't get close enough to damage you. That's why they need some form of ranged ability in order to be able to take it down. Now, the Warrior is also in the same boat, but they have leap in order to be able to close. In order to gap close. The Stalker doesn't have that to as much of an extent from what we've seen. It does have things to get out of dodge, so it's things like false retreat. So someone, if things are going really pear-shaped, they can jump back 15 meters, like to jump out of a telegraph. And then once the telegraph's passed, they can jump back, and when they jump back, it does a knockdown effect on anything that's around where they were. Little things like that, and that's the kind of ducking and diving element. That isn't being able to kind of like gap close or anything like that. Well, you could, but it's much more of a tactical or situational thing rather than just a he's holding me at range, I'll just leap in and hit it. So that's why it's there. But it's going to be the whole PvP testing during beta that's really going to balance these things out.
I mean, to what degree a really savvy stalker, and just as a quick aside, I have lost my chat entirely. I can't reconnect it. It's saying no, go away to me. So if you could keep your eyes on the chat and point out anything that I'm not seeing, that would of course be good.
I'm having exactly the same problem. I don't know what's happening with Twitch chat tonight. It's like, Twitch is gone.
Twitch has gone. And indeed, I have part of a notepad in front of my window I've just seen, so I've just moved that. That should get rid of that. Sorry about that. Let's just touch again then. You mentioned false retreat. So two things here. I guess that a savvy player could do what I used to do with the Hunter. I'm having a mental block. So WoW Hunter had the shoot backwards maneuver as well. Can't think of the name of it, but I also used to frequently use it to actually, I'd jump in the air, do half a jump turn, trigger the ability to fly closer to something if I wanted to shift to the other side of a room to shoot something or whatever. Yeah. So it can be used to move both ways, I would imagine.
Yeah. I have fond memories of hunters using that ability, jumping around, trying to attack something. I don't remember if it was evasion or escape or something like that, and they would jump back off a cliff or something like that.
With great power come great responsibility, or words to that effect. Or a great desire to understand gravity is perhaps another way of phrasing it. But interestingly, it drops a beacon. So it's not just zap, I'm now over here. It's zap, I'm now over here, but in a blink of an eye, I can be back. So as the other player, you really don't want to be where that beacon is, I would suspect.
Yes. Yeah, things like that seem like they're built for things like the boss is doing a big attack that's being telegraphed. It's a really heavy-duty melee attack that's going to do a shed load of damage, and you want to get away from it.
A big cleave or a whirlwind.
Yeah, a big cleave or a whirlwind, or something that's got like a 3 to 4 second cast time that's really blatant, but will probably kill you if you stand in it. And being able to dodge out and then back is just so useful. And it means that things like your standard double tap dodge or control tap dodges, you can then save when you really need it. But yeah, it's part of that kind of avoidance tanking ability. Whereas the warrior would probably just hit a button and up shields to cope with it. It provides a different style of tanking, a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more movement. So he's good.
They've certainly put some thought into what are coming out as interesting abilities. Not quite your vanilla. Yep, these are all straight replicas. They've taken good ideas, good concepts, things we know and love from elsewhere, but there's a little tweak on them all. What other ones did we find out about? We found out about Reaver. So Reaver speaks a little more to those people playing the game in a tanking stance. Or again, it could be used as some form of oh yikes button to try and help others out. So it's if I understand correctly, it was a line area of effect, so kind of that channel that goes zooming down, that causes any target in it to focus on you. Now that wording was a little vague, because, okay, to focus, does it turn around and look at you and go, hi, and then just go straight back to doing what it's doing? Well, I doubt it. There wouldn't be much point in that. The animations could be great, but that's about all. Does it come and do you gain aggro to what percentage for the duration of the channel? Does it last for a certain amount of time? Does it give you a window to catch up on aggro? Does it make it 100% target?
Yeah.
What would you guess?
So it depends on in which kind of category it falls into, whether it's one of the intimidates or whether it's just a taunt. Now, things like this, where you're attacking in a line, I would suspect it's more of an intimidate rather than a taunt. And just to clarify, the two differences are that a standard taunt will put you at the top of the threat meter until it fades off. not so useful initially, but it means that if you need to pull aggro for a little bit of time, you can do that thing. And Intimidate will put you at the top of the threat meter and keep you there. Now, there are other kinds of effects that both of these do to make them useful to use repeatedly during combat, but it also means that threat is going to be more of a useful thing because you want to, there's a bigger risk of you losing it. There will be some raid fights that we've been told about where you will need to have more than one tank and you will need to alternate between them. And if you start messing around with your abilities, it means that if you can't do a taunt at a particular time, you're going to have serious problems. So.
And I thought that was also quite telling. A little bit of a tangent here now to what we're talking about with the Stalker. But the fact that we know now already, yes, they've got things that are designed that require tank switches. I mean, that was just standard once upon a time. Oh, I'm going raiding, it's 40 men, I'm going to bring 4 tanks. Actually, I'm probably going to bring 5.5 tanks in a typical setup, just so I've got some cover. And we haven't had to see that for a while. So again, they're sending out the messages and the signals that the raiding game is well thought about, well considered and pitched at a difficulty, a competence and an awareness level that matches the rhetoric.
I would definitely agree with that. And that stems really from Carbine's background with a number of them that have come from Blizzard Entertainment and World of Warcraft initially, and a number of other developers that have worked on other MMOs of similar kind of significance and prestige and with similar kinds of features. It's still heartwarming that they're saying, no, we want to make a game that has a lot more movement, a lot more dynamism, a lot more interesting things to do while you're in combat. And that's really the crucial thing, because I think we're getting to that stage where we're a bit bored of just standing there and going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we want to get to this case where we're kind of like attack, move, dodge, parry, thrust, riposte kind of thing.
I hope that when we have to push the riposte button, there's an inflection in all the sound effects that we're actually getting, because that was fantastic. What was that? That was parry, dodge, move, riposte, then do it back and do something else again. Wonderfully phrased.
I'm sure there will be an add-on or something.
If not, I shall write it just for you.
Thank you so much.
Let's think a little more then about what we know of the class from a tanking perspective. So give us the headlines. If you're a tank, why should you be getting excited about this particular class over, say, the warrior?
Well, in terms of tanking ability, it's really kind of how you like to tank. Do you prefer to kind of stand there, stand your ground, hit your buttons, and not necessarily do significant damage, but really kind of be a meat shield that gets in the way of things? Doesn't necessarily need to move around too much, but wants to be solid, sturdy, and a presence on the battlefield. If so, play a warrior. You'll probably like that. If you want to be the kind of ducking and diving, dodging and weaving, whirling and swirling kind of, but a tank with it, where you are holding the aggro of the big bad genie, it feels much more like a kind of like a Prince of Persia kind of tank, if that makes sense, where you've got scimitars and blades and what have you, but you're still controlling the fight and moving around a boss. And you might end up almost like in a blade dance around the creature that you're fighting, or the boss that you're trying to deal with. If that sounds more appealing to you, if that has more of an allure, then the Stalker tank is probably going to be right up your street, mainly because it seems to have all of those bits and pieces. I might be romanticizing the experience slightly, but I think it's probably going to be fairly like that. And I think it's going to be worth checking out at least. And if not, I'll just hit stealth and watch them all die.
Or another ability that was touched on that I've just remembered, emergency stealth. Now this seemed to be one that was aimed at the Tonks. So it's another movement, I believe, followed by a stealth for a limited duration that does not break during damage. So
Yes.
where and how are you going to use this? It could be the ultimate oh yikes button. I don't know to what degree stealth itself will stop certain things hitting you, but environmental stuff possibly, or I don't know, pure guesswork.
Well,
Oh, go.
I was going to say, if you're in stealth and you're in emergency stealth, if you don't move out of the telegraphs, you will still take damage. Yeah. So if you it doesn't matter if people can't see you. If you're standing in the bad, you will still take damage. So, there. The whole point behind emergency stealth is twofold. You might have certain abilities which allow you to reduce incoming damage while you're in stealth, in which case emergency stealth might be pretty useful if you want to if you miss your dodge and go, oh crap, he's about to hit me, emergency stealth might help. But also if you've got certain abilities that do bonuses while you're in stealth, it might be a case of I'll hit emergency stealth because then I can do shed loads of damage. And I can mash all my buttons, get all my get a load of damage out, and then wait for it to go on cooldown again. So.
One thing I saw they'd confirmed, and if you look at some of the videos, and again I can't think of the right one, but we can link one. I think the Combat Sandwich video had a clip of a stalker standing at the edge of a cliff looking down over a valley that kind of went mwah-ha-ha-ha-ha. And you could see the mwahaha above its head. And I was delighted to see that actually confirmed that that was the visual for the taunt intimidate for the warrior and the stalker.
Yeah.
Which just actually not only great from a comedic perspective, it's like watching a still out of a Batman and Robin comic, I guess. But also how fantastic from a group dynamic communication perspective. Oh, Bob's just hit taunt. I can now do ABC, XYZ. I'm okay for a few seconds.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool.
It is a really nice touch, and I'm hoping that we have a couple of variations on the theme where you have like a taunt and you have an intimidate, and you get a couple of different variations. That said, I can quite easily see certain guilds coming up with the rule that says if you have a button that does that emote, you have to do that emote on Mumble or on Ventrilo or voice chat or whatever. Otherwise, you're like, no DKP for you.
Thank you for the brainwave.
so many tanks now going, I hate you guys.
Please be sure to send all postcards, brickbats, bouquets, anthrax, anything else to that nature.
The Gaz relishes your hate.
He is a chewer after all. I mean, this does explain an awful, awful lot. Defensive cooldowns was something else that was bounced around in the AMA. And I think the answer we had, is it things like Nanofield, again, yet another ability, Frenzy. We've got Absorption Shields, and we've got Deflect Shields. We've also seen some reference to a lot of group buffs that they can actually provide. So the group will get a difference to Deflect, the group will get a something else. Now, that makes me think of something else interesting if I put my raiding hat on, and one day I'll actually have to bring my raiding hat. I don't know what it looks like. One day I will find it, I will see it in a shop somewhere, probably on the Portobello Road, and go, that is my raiding hat, and I shall need to buy it.
That sounds like you're having your fighting trousers. But there we go.
Yes, my very best fight. No, I want a raiding hat. So to anyone watching, please, we want pictures, Twitters, emails, suggestions, please, of what a raiding hat should look like.
I would have suggested you're probably actually wearing your raiding hat, but there we go.
Quite possibly. I quite like this one. Nicely embroidered. Sadly, I have to tilt my head the right way around because it's all the wrong way around on the camera. It does have this logo on it that kind of spoils it a bit, but it makes up for it on that side. So there we go. So we've got this ability to add something to the group. And I'm reading group there in the context of the smaller group within the larger group. Does that mean we're back to stacking groups and working out where to put people? And is it only me that likes that idea?
I'm hoping that it might mean that it's a bit of a difficult thing, because on the one hand, you want to be able to drop down telegraphs and for people to go, oh look, that's a nice telegraph. I want to run and take advantage of that nice, friendly green telegraph that was full of smiles and happiness. Fantastic. However, I'm also kind of acutely aware that you're going to have, and this is just looking at the kind of level 20 Bladewind the Invoker fight, where you had the first phase where he was like standing in the middle with lightning shooting out, and he had his 4 minions standing there looking impressive. And then you had the second phase where nothing very much happened. You killed the 4 minions, and he was going, oh, bleh. And then you had the third phase where he was going nuts. You had these lightning wisps going around, and every so often he'd chuck out this checkerboard telegraph, and if you were standing in the red, you were not going to be having a good time. And if you're standing in the clear and you got hit by a wisp, then you'd be immobilized and you'd have to smash your F key in order to break the stun lock you were in. So I'm thinking you've got all that going on, and you've got some smart ass going, stand next to me, I've got this buff, and you're going, no mate, not for all the, yeah.
But all the tea in China aside, shouldn't that level of competence be required at the top end of 40-man raiding?
Yes and no, but I think it's going to require, and the reason I say yes and no is because on the one hand, I want people to be able to move around.
Yeah.
Freely and stuff like that, which is partly what the whole kind of dynamic combat and high movement combat is all about. But on the other hand, I want people to work together to try and optimize how things work. And we saw this to a certain extent in Guild Wars 2 when you would drop down things like combo fields. So one person would drop down a pit of fire and another person would shoot through it and have fiery arrows or fiery bullets. And the same kind of thing could happen here, where you drop down a thing and someone else stands in it, and it might improve their DPS or give them a temporary buff or something like that. But I think trying to make it a mandatory part of, if you don't do this, you won't take down the boss because your DPS won't be high enough, or you won't have enough damage reduction and you'll die, or stuff like that, I think that starts becoming like... You know, and the top end of guys. I mean, this is like separating the 5% from the 1%, and it's coming that fine now. And I'm thinking, on the one hand, I really, really want to do that. On the other hand, I'm going.
So, I mean, that to me is quite an interesting one. I would agree if that baseline is required from top end veteran dungeons onwards. Yeah, maybe a problem. Would I like to see fights in the, let's say, the later, deeper tiers of 40-man, needing that level of cohesion, particularly if you're trying to take stuff down early when everyone's not overgeared? Actually, I think that's a great thing. How about if the first few, if you want to kill this thing without everyone wearing tier 1, whatever that happens to be, you can do the numbers if you can do all this as well. But 99% of people, and hey, probably us, are going to have to wait until you've got some gear because you're not juggling all these extra things. So again, headroom for skill. That's a great thing. But the bit I was looking at earlier is a specific phrase in the AMA where they said, well, having certain abilities, and I don't know if they link this to amping or not, would allow you to give something to the group. Now, I didn't interpret that, maybe wrongly, as being a telegraph. So I was thinking of things like, I use another Hunter reference from the early days, True Shot Aura, just affecting the group you were in its very first iteration. And as a raid lead, having to go, where do I put Bob? Who do I put with Bob because they need these buffs more? What choices am I making? What choices am I not making? What compromises am I accepting to gain these benefits? And again, I might be crazy, but I actually liked that. It added some strategic depth and decision making to your tactics.
Yes, and I can appreciate that to an extent, but that part of that decision making and tactics process was part of the, okay, we're going to minimize or put a cap on the amount of buffs that you can have as a group and the amount of debuffs that you can apply to a boss, because it originally started out as you can apply anything up to 40 buffs and debuffs on
rolling ignites.
Exactly, and stuff like that, and because effectively there were limitations on the game engine, and I'm hoping that WildStar doesn't have those same limitations, that they've taken it into account when they've actually been putting the game together to say, okay, these are the kind of debuffs, these are the kind of buffs and debuffs you can apply. This is how it's going to work in a 5-man setting, a solo setting, a 20-man setting, and a 40-man setting. And I think that they will have thought ahead enough for that, but we shall see.
We shall see what happens. We could go on for a very long time, but the clock is ticking a little bit. I think perhaps what we'll do is two things here. Guys, Twitch chat is not playing nicely. That's being a little politely. If you're in it, congratulations. We're not.
Yes.
So, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to, first of all, put out our Twitter. If you're not on it, if you're not following it, if you're not using it, shame on you. I shall pelt you with rotten tomatoes from a very tall tower. However, you can find us on Twitter on @MMOBuff. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, things you'd like us to mention regarding the Wondrous Stalker, please Twitter us or tweet us now, as we say. Meanwhile, yes, I have just rebuilt my machine, thank you. That probably obfuscated everyone's screen there for a moment. Let me do a quick high-speed rundown of the basics of the class that I don't think we've actually touched. I think, Gaizmoff, will come to you to say, well, what are your highlights? What are your takeaways of the class? So, what have we got with the Stalker?
Of the Stalker class?
Yeah, but I'll
in terms of my
okay, I'll do the basics afterwards. All yours.
In terms of my particular takeaways of the class, now I find it quite an interesting one that they're trying to evolve the Stalker class and really make it its own, rather than it being. It doesn't seem to have that kind of magic and mysticism in there that things like the Spellslinger and the Esper have. It's very much a kind of, you are a high-tech assassin. It's almost like Solid Snake rather than anything else. I was half expecting Carbine to turn around and say, yes, you have an ability that puts a cardboard box over you. It was like, are we going to see that? Maybe.
/box, it's going to be an emote.
Yeah.
Probably next to /plane, if anyone gets that reference to the Redditors out there.
I do think that things like the nanite skin coating, it doesn't seem to be a suit, it's actually a skin coating the Stalker has, which seems to really make it kind of special in terms of being able to not only stealth, but also leech life from people. So if you're running low on health and you want to heal up a bit, you'll be able to leech health from other people, as long as you've got the ability on your bar. And it was little things like that which I thought made it quite cool and unique. I also loved the screenshots that we saw where they had multiple different fist weapons as well, and the way they sheath and unsheath, it's very kind of Wolverine schnickety schnick kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. It's not like you're out there with a pair of daggers, Assassin's Creed style. You're like schnickety schnick, stabby stab, and then, yeah, I'm just a guy walking around, no problem at all.
I'm still waiting for the first Stalker I meet in game once it comes out in the future to be called Edward Scissorhands or something. It's gonna happen. I'm sure it is.
It will definitely happen. It will definitely happen. And oh, by the way, before I polish it off, I have MMOBuff chocolate.
Ooh. Why do I not have MMO Buff chocolate?
I don't know.
I'm gonna.
It's very nice.
I could say this is MMO Buff beer, but I would be lying. It is, however, still beer. So, what do we know about the class? What are the basics? The people that don't know much about it, well, what have we got? So, first of all, it uses three things. Yes, it uses claws in all the various shapes and sizes, but it also uses devices. To what degree this is going to be a go-go inspector gadget, not quite clear yet, but there's plenty of scope for stuff to be found and, you know, come around from the future. And yes, I now too have the go-go gadget copter in my head. And as you mentioned...
I was thinking of go-go gadget tank.
That will work. We'll be using that one. And of course the nano skin. Wonderfully quoted as, "That's why this year's homicide hobbyist dresses to kill in a nanite-charged skin of smart fabric." So, yeah, all good stuff there. But of course, they come in both flavours. Sensible Stalkers will come in Exile flavour, which means they can be human, Orin, or Mordesh. Others could choose to come in Dominion flavour, and they would be Gaizmoff.
I don't have the screen in front of me.
They would be Cassian. I mean, that was such a good lead-in I gave you there as well. They would be Cassian, Draken, or Makari.
Like a stalker yourself, you kind of sprung that one upon me. There we go.
Nicely done. The resource type is suit power. If your suit ain't doing anything, you ain't doing anything, really. You're going to sit there and go, charge me up.
Yep.
Two roles. They can play as DPS. They can play as a tank. If you're DPS, you get things like Staggering Strike, Nanovirus, and the host of ones we've mentioned that came out in the AMA. False Retreat, Nano Dart, Reaver, Decoy, Cripple on the tanking side as well. And of course there is a little bit of lore for the Stalkers. Since the dawn of creation they have been around. But we'll let you go read that. It's on the WildStar page. It's wildstar-online.com. Follow your nose towards the class drop area. Click on Stalker. And it's not hiding in the shadows. It's right there for you. There's a few questions, but also there is the Reddit AMA. Really well worth a look, indeed, for all of the classes. So that'll simply be reddit.com/r, as always for the subreddits, /WildStar. But that, unless we have some questions to deal with, hopefully in a moment, is going to give us our roundup of the Stalker, I think. Gaizmoff,
I think...
anything to add?
No, I think we've staked that topic out well and truly.
Fantastic. So, let me see if there's any life on Mars. It seems that the Twitterverse is not particularly active. Clearly we've covered everything in vast detail, and there are no questions left. Everything there is to know about the Stalker is now known. So there you have it, guys. A few quick announcements and bits and bobs. You may have noticed this week all things MMO buff have been a little erratic. Unfortunately, the gremlins have been out, or rather the chewers have. I haven't been 100% for most of the week. Pseudo is still very much not well, but is hoping to be back with us next week. So we should see a little bit more normal activity next week, although I'm travelling. I'm going to be in another random European country. I'll find out which one next week. So shows might not have all of us. Sorry, Gaizmoff?
I was going to say you and me both. I'm off to Sweden next week.
And in fact, I am going to be in Denmark. So there we go. We may meet at an airport lounge somewhere soon.
Yes.
I wouldn't be at all surprised.
I'll see you
at Gatwick? Oh, right. No, I'll go from Gatwick. So there you go, guys. And we will, of course, soon be thinking about stopping for Christmas. There's likely to be a Christmas special show of some sort. We're still putting the details together on that. Maybe an amalgamation of the different shows. But while the show season quietens down, you might find there's a little more streaming to be had. So as always, thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. If I'd thought about it, I'd have put some magical effects in and I'd have disappeared like a stalker. But that's not going to be happening. So no stealth mode for us. Simply a chance to say, Gaizmoff, anything to add before you say goodnight?
Good night.
Then, in the oldest cliche ever, it's good night from him. And it's good night from me.
Good night from him.
This is Mizpah, MMOBuff.TV, signing off.